Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what's going on here and what the actual numbers are. One of the things that Georgia Power has to its advantage is that these things are complicated. It's complicated to talk about utility contracts. Most of us don't really understand that. And what ends up happening is they say a whole lot of stuff to confuse everyone as to what's really going on. So let me tell you what's really going on. So Georgia Power has gotten approval from the Public Service Commission to double the amount of energy that they produce, double. At least 80% of that is for data centers, they say. The Public Service Commission's own staff a month earlier said, this is an outrageous request. In no way should you 5 people approve this, because we don't know if all of these data centers are coming and we don't know if they'll all stay. So you should approve a third of it and do another third conditional. Well, 1 month later, and let's be clear that this staff is not fully independent the way a consumer utility council will be, such as what's in the bill SB 94 filed by the senator from Rome, popped up the day before the commission had to vote on it with a stipulated agreement. This is very common at the Public Service Commission, all 5 of whom have been incredibly responsive to Georgia Power, and it's unclear that they really have studied any of the issues themselves, frankly. And said, oh, yep, here's our stipulated agreement, giving Georgia Power a green light for everything it asked for, which is doubling the size of our grid. At the same time, Georgia Power said, great news, we have agreed that there will be $850 in downward pressure for 3 years, for 3 years after the 3-year freeze. Now we're still going to see bills going up because we've got a fuel case coming before the commission and everything else. But let's be clear about several things. $850 in downward pressure does not mean your bills go down $850. A lot of us were here for Plant Vogtle. The exact same thing that happened then is exactly what's going on now. A lot of talking, a lot of dinners, a lot of spending, and a lot of people who don't really understand the issue and are loath to go against one of the biggest industries in the state and the biggest lobbying presences in the building. And what happened with Vogtle? We all know that history. At least twice the cost and more, and it took over half as long, and everyone's bills have gone up a lot because of Vogtle. But here's what happened. I was here, and there was testimony telling the Senate, I was an aide, telling the Senate, when they built 1 and 2, the whole thing went off the rails and it cost a ton of money and the customers paid for most of it. But they claimed that would not happen again. What happened? It happened again. And that is what is going on now. So to return to the main question, they say $850 in downward pressure. That does not mean, a la Vogtle, that your bills are going down. It means they might go up slightly less, but only for 3 years. However, they are planning to build an enormous amount of new power plants that the customers will have to pay for 45 years and will cost all in to build $50 to $60 billion. The quote downward pressure agreement, which again means very little, it means something but very little in terms of actually what your bill looks like, are for 3 years. The contracts that have been entered so far, some are under the quote unquote rule put into place by the PSC, which is exactly what this bill is. This bill is the rule Georgia Power put in place at the PSC that ensures that they still have all the latitude to charge all the customers for the massive cost of building power plants for tech billionaires if the data centers don't come or don't stay. And in the process, Georgia Power makes billions of dollars. So, I know it's confusing, but let me recap. Customers will be on the hook for $50 to $60 billion for 45 years. The downward pressure thing is for 3 years. The contracts that Georgia Power currently has, not all of them are even under this window dressing rule. Those that are last at most 15 to 20 years, at most. Let me repeat, we will be paying for this for 50 to 60 years. And that is what we're talking about. That is what we're talking about. You have to have a contract to make these tech companies pay for 50 to 60 years to actually cover the customers. Otherwise, the customers bear all the risk that after their contracts run out in 15 years, for those that even have a contract that's that strong, will stay. And waiting for the $50 to $60 billion for another 30 years. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, for whom we are building data centers along with Zuckerberg and all the rest, are already talking about putting data centers in space. No one was even talking about this stuff 3 years ago. And now we are literally doubling the size of our grid and the amount of power that we can produce for these companies, not requiring them to pay for any of it past 15 years, and making sure that if it all doesn't work out the way Georgia Power is telling everyone, that there's someone there to pick up the pieces and pay the bill, just like Vogtle. So don't believe any of what they're saying, because that's what's going on. 3 years downward pressure, you've got to be kidding me. That's just talk. You need to ask the question, if the data centers, hi lovely Georgia Power lobbyists, if the data centers don't come or don't stay the way you hope, who will have to pay? And most people do not understand enough about what is actually happening to ask those questions. The rule at the Public Service Commission has more holes than you can drive a truck through. It does not protect consumers. This bill is the rule at the Public Service Commission. So, people of Georgia are incredibly frustrated. We have all heard. Our power bills have gone up 6 times in 2 years. They've risen more than anywhere else in the country, basically. The Southern Company CEO made $50 million last year. Southern had bigger profits than they have ever had last year. The Georgia Power CEO makes $5 million a year. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith in Hogansville, Georgia, who are mad that a data center is coming to their town, are the ones paying Georgia Power salaries and making Jeff Bezos and the crew even richer. That's exactly what's going on. And Georgia Power knows the reason they are fighting this, the original 34, the senator from the 34th bill, is because they know that the contracts do not actually cover customers. They want to make sure that they do not actually cover customers for the length of what they are entering into. Because that would mean that if the data centers don't come or don't stay, that their shareholders would have to pay for the excess. And maybe them taking out some of this massive salaries they're collecting. They don't want that. They want to be able to spread that risk away from their shareholders and put it all on all of us that pay the bills. No matter how little the people make, no matter how much they're struggling, no matter in the age of an affordability crisis, they just want to build all these new power plants, collect their 12% profit, have all of us pay for it for 50 to 60 years, and just try to fool everyone that this is some kind of good idea and really fair for them. All that's happening is Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg are getting richer and we're paying for it. And sadder, people who really can't afford it are paying for it. And that is a shame. That is a shame that we have not bothered to learn the details about what these contracts really do, to ask the hard questions, to understand what these contracts really do and do not do, and are so excited because I get it. It's hard to vote against the big lobbying industry. It's hard. They're very good at what they do. They're very good at what they do. But when you've got millions of people all over this state who absolutely get it, like the senator from the 10th said, they do not want these data centers. They are suspicious of AI. They know it's for Zuckerberg and all the rest. And we pick Georgia Power instead of them. We shut down the Senate to pick Georgia Power instead of them. The public needs to understand what is going on here, and what is going on is that the majority is too terrified to tell Georgia Power no, or even be straight with everybody. We adjourned the Senate. That is an embarrassment. Let's be very clear. The votes were there because enough people understand the facade that this bill is, the shell game. And that just couldn't be allowed to happen, that we would actually side with the people of Georgia over a powerful lobbying industry. Just couldn't be allowed to happen. Oh, we're adjourned, y'all. That is embarrassing. The public understands what's going on here, and we are giving them a middle finger. If I could have offered an amendment, I was going to offer an amendment that ratepayer dollars should not be allowed to be used for lobbying. Other states have that rule. Captive ratepayers who have no other company they can go to get their power should not be forced to pay for lobbying efforts that undermine their financial interests at the Gold Dome. They should not, and other states don't allow it. And the whole reason we shut down the Senate is because we're too scared of them because of their lobbying. That is pathetic. So I was going to offer that amendment. We have no choice who to pay. I don't want my money. They don't even want to let 94 go through, the Consumer Utility Council. Every other state in the country has one, because they know what it would expose to have someone actually at the PSC who could really speak for the customers, who would have the right to see all the trade secret information. Do y'all not notice? If anything pops up here that would be remotely customer friendly, they go into overdrive to block it. They want total control. They want nothing interfering with exactly what their plan is, exactly how much money they make, and exactly the power they've got over this body and the PSC. They're down here fighting the Consumer Utility Council. They're fighting the plug-in tiny solar bill. It's outrageous. They don't want that because the minute people are doing things like solar, it interferes with the way they make their money, which is to build giant power plants that we all pay for 60 years. So they don't want any solar. If you failed to notice that, then you're getting fooled by their pilot projects that are like, for 5,000 people. So yeah, I would offer that amendment. I don't want to pay them to fight against my right to buy a tiny plug-in solar machine so that I can bring my power bills down. I don't want to pay for their right to lobby me against, and let me not make it about me. We need to talk about the people in rural Georgia all over this state and in urban Georgia all over this state that are struggling day to day. They should not have to pay for Georgia Power to be down here every minute of every day fighting against any bill that would help lower their costs or chart a slightly different energy future than exactly what Georgia Power wants. And not one majority body, Republican-controlled majority body, has stood up to them in over 20 years. They've been in complete control. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'll yield the well. All right, I'll yield the well. Thank you.
You did have one question, Senator.